everyone, how are you feeling? For me, this kind of feels like a family gathering with so many familiar faces. You know, Virginie was just here, Semra, kind of the cheeky Uncle Jose is here. So I'm so happy to be among a crowd of people, and I think we're all very much on the same mission here. I'm here to talk about a new book called The Hero Trap. It's an up-and-coming book, so it's not kind of ready yet. But I got to say that I used to be a big believer in purpose. And Jeff just mentioned my earlier book, Good Advertising. And this was like about a decade ago. And it was really about brands as a force for good. It was about advertising as a force for good. But about a decade ago, I kind of felt ridiculed. It was in a way a bit too early. Today, I mean, it's become mainstream, right? Every brand is talking about doing good. So what I want to do now is kind of take a bit of a look at where is purpose at today. And purpose today looks a little bit like this. Brands being incredibly busy with talking about all the good stuff that you're doing, right? Oh, we're ridding our oceans of plastics, you know, we're doing all this stuff for small girls in Africa, quitting plastic straws. So think about all these messages just being poured out there. And for me, it's actually stuck in that old approach of mass marketing and mass communication. You put yourself up on that pedestal and you say, we're going to save the world. We're the one who's doing all the change, you know? If you start thinking about it, I'm sure Patagonia is somewhere here, right? But if you listen to what Patagonia is saying, their purpose, we want to save our home planet. Wow, that's a pretty bold commitment. And I see a lot of brands kind of rushing to become the Patagonias. But is that really the right approach? Patagonia can do it because they're a legacy brand. But what about every other brand? If you think about it, how many people do you know that have a burning purpose? How many? A couple maybe? 2, 3? Why would that ever be different from brands? So why are we rushing into this purpose space? And also the big thing is though, and I think that's interesting, so the more we talk about purpose, it seems like the more people are becoming cynical. Isn't that curious? So something must be wrong. I saw this statistics from Deloitte that said 66% of people, young people, believe that you're only in the business to make money, up from 50% the year before. So we're not really succeeding in creating that trust. And there's also a second thing that's happening. We always hear about how everybody is believing in brands as the force for change. But I saw some statistics from Cone Communications, I'm sure there's somebody from Cone, that actually said the young people today, 45% of young people believe in themselves as the agents of change. So the question I ask myself, how do we create change? And when we look at the statistics, the thing is that 65%, and these are from the Good Life report, 65% of people, we all know these numbers, right? 65% of people say they want to buy from purposeful companies. But why is it that only 26% follow through? That's the thing, that's the behavior gap. We've got to have to figure that out. But maybe it's actually not that strange if you think about it. I mean, we've all done our New Year's pledges, right? And I promise you probably pledged to become a little bit, get back in shape. And yet, 2 weeks after, the running shoes are still lying in the hallway, right? For me, this year, I wanted to learn how to cook vegan and a vegetarian. So that was my New Year's pledge. And just to kind of dive into this a little bit more, and to get a little bit of honesty in this room, I want to hear your New Year's pledges. Is that okay? What is the one small or big thing that you want to change? So we're going to have some honesty. So I'm going to count down to 3, and then you're going to shout out loud that little one thing you want to change. Okay? I didn't really hear yes there. You have a voice. Okay, good. So 3, 2, 1.
Zero waste.
Wow. I mean, I know you're perfect, but I didn't really hear the enthusiasm, and we can change this. So let's try again. 3, 2, 1. Cool. I got a very loud zero waste up here, so I'm going to follow up on that in a year from now. Great, so there's all these small and big things that we want to change in our lives. But yet still, the one question most companies ask themselves is why? Why is pretty navel-gazing and self-important. It looks at the brand as the big agent of change. It looks at your visions, your dreams. But I think we have to ask a different question. I think we have to ask who. Who can you help your customers become? Because we are, in fact, our own biggest enemies of change. So if we don't ask the right question, how are we ever going to succeed with creating that change that is needed? Because who is about my dreams. It's about my visions. It's about self-actualization that Manu talked about from National Geographic. So let me share one example. So I talked in the book with hundreds of different brands that take a different approach, that takes this transformational approach. And one of the companies, to share different companies, because we always talk about the Unilevers, etc., so I want to bring in a new company. So a Danish company, probably not a lot of you know it, but it's called Årstiderne. But I'm sure you have similar companies here. Basically, it's a box that's being delivered at my door with fresh produce. But it also comes with a recipe, right? So remember, I wanted to learn how to cook more vegan and vegetarian. So basically, I'm not buying the fruit and the fresh produce, but what I'm buying is that recipe. They're motivating me. And when I talked to their CEO, who's also called Thomas, apparently like a very common Danish name, he said he doesn't view his company as a purposeful company, but he talks about earth connection, and he talks about how his customers have to go on a journey of self-discovery. And he shares one very good example. They do all these events in cities, and he shares that the first time people in cities harvest a beetroot, and they see the hands being colored red, that is that magical little earth connection. And the approach to marketing is also different, because it's not about them as a company, but it's about getting their customers to promote the earth connection. And I do that, because when I actually, bake that little nice-looking vegan pie, obviously I'm proud, and I share it on Facebook and share it on Instagram. Most of the time, the reality is probably a little bit more like that. Let's not talk about that. And he shared how today, and they have lots of different boxes with meat, with fish, but today he's realized to get 80% of the customers to eat more plant-based. But asking who and who can your customers become is also about leadership. And I think, unfortunately, that we're still stuck in a very wide, male-dominated leadership that is about, we have to go in this direction. I decide, I'm the Führer, let's go that direction. Whereas anybody who's worked with young people today, they look at themselves as the agents of change and the bosses. If I tell anybody in my agency to do this slide deck, they'll be like, why should I do that? I'm like, but in a way I'm paying you, right? So people want to be in charge, and we see that new leadership evolving. Think about Greta, right? Who's inspired young people all over the world to join this school strike for climate. Or take another movement, the Me Too movement. It's not about the Seth Godin idea about the tribe. This is pretty much actually a faceless movement that we can all take part in. And we can all say, girls, women, men, boys alike, and try and define what is our Me Too movement. So I think the new leadership is not about believing in your brand, in your organization, in yourselves as the agent of change or in your ability to create change, but actually believe in other people's ability to create change. And I think, don't we all know that? I mean, we hate having a boss coming into us and say, do that slide deck. We don't like that. The truth is, in fact, we want to be in charge of our own life, our own choices, and our own happiness. And I'm going to show you one example. So the thing is, we do things because we like doing them. It's about the passion, right? I love wave surfing. I'm not a very good wave surfer, still do it. Or take something like IKEA, the Billy bookcase. I'm sure most of you have struggled with that, right? Isn't that a crazy business model? Why do you want to pay for going through all that stuff about putting that bookshelf together? I mean, obviously, when I succeed, I'm super happy. I go into my girlfriend and I can feel a little bit manly again, which can be hard in Denmark, I admit. Most of the time when you don't succeed, you're risking the relationship. So it is a risky business model. But this works, and what I'm so fascinated about this is that it's a different approach. Because when you ask who, you're automatically aiming for that top of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's about self-actualization. And I think branding is rapidly changing because we live in a different area. People can do everything themselves. Let's stop the mass marketing approach, the mass production approach. It's not working. So we have to look at the customer and the value for the customer. So if you look at this little graph up here, we've been in the functional space. Yes, it's been about a faster car. Then the emotional benefit, it's been about a masculine car, so driving the BMW, feeling a little bit more masculine. The societal benefit, which is where we're at with purpose, right? A more environmentally friendly car. Where I think we're heading right now is towards that transformative promise, being a conscious traveler. So I suggest we build brands differently, because we need to bridge the behavior gap. We need to bridge the purpose gap. So here's 4 questions that every brand needs to ask itself. The first one is what? So what is it you do? So the products or the services can be the running shoes. The how. So in what unique way do you deliver this? So maybe it's faster or better quality. Obviously the who. Who do you enable your customers to become? This is about the transformation. And this model has been inspired by psychotherapy and coaching. And for those of you who know coaching, it's goal-oriented. It's moving you from the things you need or want and getting you to realize that. So for me, it was also important to ask when. Not a lot of marketeers ask when. And when is not about a deadline, it's about a mindset. So when you follow this approach of the arrow, you're pushing people towards the good life, the small and big goals that you all shared with me that you want to achieve in your lives. And secondly, your tools become that little trigger. Your brand become that little trigger. Let me share one example with you. So Discovery is a health insurance company. And the outcome of the arrow, I call a transformative promise. Because I don't want to call it a purpose. I think it's a too big word. Transformative promise, because it's about the transformation you promise in your customers' lives. Their transformative promise is incentivizing people to live healthier. I like that. It's very functional. Everybody in the company can work towards that goal, incentivizing people to live healthier. And one of the things they're doing is they're rewarding people for buying healthy food, for exercising more. And by taking this approach that's motivational, they've actually succeeded pushing people that take part in this program towards exercising 5.2 days more per month. That's pretty impressive, which translated to years, it's actually 4 years longer living. Secondly, they also bridge the purpose gap, because if they're successful in making their customers healthier, there's less premiums to be paid. So I wanted to test this in a kind of campaign advertising way. So I looked at 4 campaigns that took a transformational approach. One of them, Always Like a Girl. You know Always Like a Girl? Hands up? Yes? Okay, you do. Okay, good. And 4 of the other campaigns took a purpose approach, which is very much about the we. So one is enabling, one is talking about itself. One of those campaigns is Budweiser, the one from Super Bowl this year, Win Never Felt So Good, the one with the dog. Remember that one? The cute little dog? Yes? No? Yeah, you can talk? Okay, yes, good. Great, so if you look to the whatever side that is, left side, those are the transformational campaigns. And what I want you to focus on is that green line. And as you can see, this is about motivation. How motivated do you feel by that message? And you can see it drops significantly when you take the purpose approach. The thing I was nervous about was that competence would be at risk. But it actually showed it doesn't. So even though your company is not talking about all the great stuff you're doing, you're not risking to be viewed as a competent company. So I'll share another campaign with you, and I'm sure II is in the house somewhere, right? II? Anybody from II? Nope, okay. Anyways, but I'm sure that you all know the Opt Outside campaign. Yeah? Some of you do? Opt Outside? Good, great. Another good campaign. But if you think about it, I mean, I live in Copenhagen, and I kind of get that thing. I want to be a little bit more connected to nature. I think all of us kind of do. So they found that little role that they can play in their customers' lives. Again, about the who. And this is not a traditional campaign, because rather than campaigning at people, people become the participants themselves. And it's amazing to see the change that they've created, moving from 1.4 million people in 15 to 15 million people in 18 opting outside. And earlier there was a talk about collaboration, right? 700 organizations joining this approach. So for me, when brands start looking at becoming a platform for people's change, dreams, aspirations, and unlocking the good life, I think we're also ultimately tackling the elephant in the room, consumption. Because by the end of the day, we don't need more stuff. And I don't think that the young generations buy more stuff. I'll share one quick example with you. When I was 15, my biggest wish for my birthday was a boombox. You know what a boombox is? One of those like doom, 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 doom. My parents are school teachers, right? So it took a lot of knacking. But last year, my niece, and she's a little tiny girl, Clara, she was something that scared her parents, her grandparents, but as an uncle, I had to keep my cool. She wanted to jump out of a parachute in an airplane. Tiny little girl. But it does show something that young people growing up in a world that is so full of stuff want experiences and challenging themselves. The idea about self-realization. So I think it's amazing if brands can be the ones that unlock that doing. All that stuff, learning more, being healthier, all those things. And the great thing about this approach is it's not about a competition of outcrying or outdoing each other, which purpose often ends up being, right? Who cares the most by the end of the day? Who cares the most about plastics on our oceans? This way, people can feel the difference on their own lives. And these are 3 girls in Colorado that opted outside. So I think we need to reframe the discussion around purpose. And I think we shouldn't ask the why, but really look at the who, and who can you enable your customers to become. Because your brand is not the hero. When you put your brand up there on the pedestal, there's a very long way to fall down. Rather, what you should do is turn your customers into the heroes. Because when you follow that approach, and when you start asking who, not only do you make people realize some of those pledges that I heard in this room, but your products and services also becomes the tool of that change. So change, I believe, begins with asking who. So thank you so much for listening in. And I'm going to do a little short book launch, even though the book is not out. I'm going to give away some of the tools and tricks. So please join me at 1 o'clock at a little kind of book giveaway. So thank you so much.